and welcome to our program. Today we are getting to know a little bit more about the project in the footsteps of the past. So the project created small stations about archaeological finds around Monsoon. Now we are going to meet Nina from Museum Silkeborg and get to know a little bit more about it. Let's go. Hi Nina.
Hello, welcome.
Thank you. How are you doing?
I'm fine.
So we saw each other not so long ago when we were doing the tour around the Silkeborg outdoor exhibition and the Silkeborg Museum. And this is kind of related, right? What is the relationship between this?
Well, the exhibition as well as what we are doing out here in the landscape is part of the project in the footsteps of the past. So at the museum I talk about all these nice histories that are hidden in the landscape that we really wanted to point out to people what to look for. And we could show all the nice objects that have been found. But here we are in the landscape, at the sites, at the archaeological sites, by the ancient monuments and so on. So here we can really tell the stories about what happened right here in this beautiful landscape. So, and we hope, of course, by then doing all this that we can get even more people out here because we believe it's very interesting. It really adds something to your experience when going out hiking, and then you suddenly also know how the landscape have been used, that you have an understanding of the landscape and what has been found. It gets just much more exciting and interesting to be out here.
And this is like the first part of this, of the continuation of the outdoor part,
yes,
right?
This is the first route. So this is at the Lake Bølling, about 10 kilometers west of Silkeborg, where we have opened this route earlier this summer. And the project is a collaboration between Museum Silkeborg, the Danish Nature Agency, and Silkeborg Kommune. So along 4 different routes in the Silkeborg area, we will then make this, put up this information about the archaeological sites in the area and tell the stories.
Okay. Was there any particular reason why this was the first location to be chosen?
Oh, it's so beautiful, and there are so many interesting stories to be told. So this is the area where we also have found the Del.1, the famous bog body. There are Stone Age sites all over the place, and there's just so many stories. So, yeah, it's one of my favorite spots.
Okay. And you're the project coordinator / does all for the project, right?
Yeah, we got the funding from nr.8, and I'm responsible for talking to them and managing the project. But I also do everything from ordering information boards to writing the stories that are to be told. So yeah, I do kind of
everything
together with good colleagues, of course.
Okay. And how was the process of building this route when you started this project? So there was the Silkeborg exhibition. Did you know already that this was also something that you would like to do with the project? Like how was this?
Yes, this is actually the main part of the project. It's these routes,
Okay.
because the main objective of our project is to get even more people out, being active in the nature. So we knew we were going to make these routes, and that the route here at the Bølling Lake would be one of the main routes that we were going to make.
Okay. Yeah, I can really see why you say it's so beautiful. Oh no, the rainbow is gone. But yeah. Okay, so this is the starting point.
You can start wherever you want in the area. You have to, of course, look at the map at our webpage, perhaps. And there are 2 parking lots, one south of Lake Bølling and one east of Lake Bølling. And then we have several stations along the yellow and the white route, walking route, where you can then get information. So you can start wherever you want. You can, if you want to go the entire route, you will have to walk 11 kilometers. But it's also possible to just go for a walk for 1 or 2 or 3 kilometers and then just visit some of the stations. And then come back and do some other stations another time, because we really want also this to be a place for families to go to. And that's also why we put up information boards where there's some text, but we really don't like a lot of text. We rather want to present all the information in other ways. So we also use audio stations like the one behind me. So there's you generate power, and then you can listen to the stories about the area. And we also put up some games and markings in the landscape and so on. So it's not just boring information boards. We want to do something that's also more interactive and that people can touch. And,
Okay, and how was the process of coming up with the stations? So how did you choose the locations? Were like some locations were already like set, like this is obvious that it has to come here. Like, where did you fit all the stories?
Well, first we had to find out which stories are in the area, what's ancient monuments, what the kind of archaeological finds have been found here. Oh, this plane.
There's a lot of things happening in this sky.
Yeah, planes, birds, so
Rainbows.
many things going on. Well, so we had to find out what stories are to be told. What are the best stories, and where are they placed in the landscape, so that it's not all in one spot, but to make a nice route for you to walk. Then we also looked at the landscape. So, for instance, we knew we were going to have a station here because this is just so beautiful.
Is this your favorite spot?
One of my favorite spots. The view of the lake is great here, but I like Bjelsgårddal as well because there's a special atmosphere and so many interesting things has happened there. So we looked what stories did we want to tell, and then we also had to take into consideration where could we actually get permission to put up these stations, because there's a lot of protected areas, and we had to get permission to put up stuff like this. So here we have reused this one, this pole. Otherwise, it's difficult to get permission, and then it was already eroded in this area, so we then got the permission to put up the binoculars just right next to it. But this is, the landscape and the vegetation is something that we really need to protect. So we also had to take that into consideration when planning where the different stations were to be located.
Did you have like any major challenges? Like with organizing the route?
Well, there were some areas where there's really interesting archaeology, but where it was private landowners and they were not really keen on having people going into their areas. So that's a bit of a shame. But we still have found some good areas where we can tell about the exciting stories.
And we just talked about the challenges. Did you have anything like unexpected happening, like something that didn't really go as planned, maybe in a good way or maybe in a bad way?
Well, in a few minutes when we go to Del.1, you will see we still are missing a sign or an information board that hasn't been finished yet, but just got a message today that it's going to be ready now. So, so you know, it's just practical stuff. Yeah. So
there were not like main obstacles that popped up out of nowhere or something.
It took almost a year before we got permission to put up all these. So you know that kind of delayed the project. And also, for instance, like a place like this where we wanted to put up the station. At first, we wanted to do it further to the west because you really have a nice view. You know, it's nice here, but there's a different view over there. And we had found the perfect spot, and I came up here a nice summer evening just to enjoy the nice view, and suddenly I look down and see flints everywhere. So here we also have a Stone Age site, and of course we couldn't put up anything there because of the archaeological site. So we then moved it to this place instead.
So you had to balance the archaeological aspect, the nature aspect, the ownership aspect, and the route itself, basically.
Yeah.
Okay, that sounds like a bit of a juggle.
Yeah.
But okay, and then we have this also. This is it. How do you call it?
Binoculars.
Binoculars. So this is like the interactive part also of this station.
Yes, because here at the station, of course, we want to tell you something about the lake. So the lake, as you see it today, it was recreated in 2005 after having been drained for almost 100 years. So the landscape is completely different today than it was just 15 years ago, but well, actually 30 years ago. And the lake that you see today is actually the biggest as it has ever been. It hasn't been this big naturally. The lake was created just right after the Ice Age, 15,000 years ago. So there was a big ice lump that was left here in this basin, and you know it was covered by gravel and sands and so on. So it only melted very slowly, but when it then melted, you had the creation of this lake. And this was a perfect place for people to do all kinds of activities. So around the lake we have, from several periods of prehistory, traces of humans having been in the area exploiting the landscape. And that's why we have all these stories that we can tell today. So, for instance, in the northernmost part of the lake, we have found evidence of reindeer hunters. So there's flint tools that have been left from these reindeer hunters that came all the way up here. It's actually the northernmost camp in Denmark from reindeer hunters that have ever been found. So we have the traces up there. So at that time it was tundra, it was very open. You could see, you know, everywhere from a place like this. Probably they came up here and could see where the reindeers were going, and
so it was like a strategic place.
It's a strategic spot here. And then later, the vegetation changed, the landscape changed. You got primeval forest, hazel, birch, and so on, and you still had the lake, and you know, it's just a really nice place to be because there's so many different resources. So you could catch fish and waterfowl. In the forest you could hunt game, and also sometimes we know that the animals would of course go to the lake to get water, and you could then shoot them and go hunting in those areas. You could pick up plant foods and mushrooms, knots. You know, it was a really good place for the Stone Age people. And it's just like in the exhibition, we also talked about the Stone Age people at the lake Langsøen in Silkeborg, and also along River Gudno, we have Stone Age sites everywhere. It's exactly the same that we find here. And you can see here on the map, so all the yellow dots, it's where we have found evidence of Stone Age sites. So it's really, all the way around the lake. Yeah. And even, as I said, on this nice place up here on this hill. So they are everywhere. And of course, what we also want people to then look for is to look for some of the trees that were from that period, or look at for some of the birds we know that were present at that time. It's some of the same that we see today. So the eagle, we saw that earlier today, swans, cranes, and so on. You can often see those here, and they also used those and hunted those back in the Stone Age. But, during the Stone Age, so you had these Stone Age hunters from perhaps 10,000 years ago until 6,000 years ago, and then gradually the lake became smaller, it became overgrown, it became more bog-like, and then the use of the area changed. So we know that, for instance, in the northern part again, we have evidence of Neolithic farmers that made rituals. So they put down flint axes and ceramics into the lake bed. So
like
we have offerings, votive offerings. We also know probably in the Bronze Age they also had some ritual practices. So we have found a kind of a platform where probably something like that happened. We also know there's in the Bronze Age stepping stones were laid across the swampy area, also in the northern part.
So you could like cross from one side to the other.
Jump from stone to stone. And then we know in the Iron Age that 3 people were sacrificed here down in Bjelskovdal that we are going to visit in a few minutes. And we also know that they were digging peat at that time. So, you know, a lot of things are happening at the lake, and it changes over time because the landscape also changes.
So it's like extreme reach in history and
because we also have later stuff to talk about, as I will show you. On our way round.
And I wanted to ask, because before you were saying that now the lake is not so deep. Has it always been like that? Do you happen to know that, or was it deeper at some point? Has the depth kind of stayed stable?
The depth as it is now is. It depends on how far they dug. Most of the area, as I will tell you about later on, were excavated for because they were producing peat. So they were cutting out peat from the area. So it depends on how far they went down there. It's
okay. So it's not natural, that part at all. It's more controlled by men.
Yeah, the depth is at the moment. But you know, in the Stone Age, when it was the biggest, when it was the biggest lake as possible, it was only slightly smaller than today. So you can still imagine that it was something like this in the Stone Age, when the Stone Age hunters were paddling on the lake and looking for a waterfall to hunt or whatever.
Yeah. Okay. Okay, so let's check out what we can see. Is this for kids to?
Yeah, I just noticed that there's some people who have moved it.
That's sweet. Okay, so what do you?
Perhaps try to look at some of the white birds you can see out there.
Where is it? This is so weird. I cannot really. There's so many birds on the. Okay. Wow. Like after. I cannot really describe, because it's really hard to also to understand what is what in here, because it's so zoomed in. But it's really cool. And you also mentioned that there was some.
You can see some of the ruins that we are going to pass later on. So kind of. Okay, here it's from an old peat work.
Oh, okay.
So we're actually gonna pass that later on.
Okay.
But often you can see swans or different birds. In this southern part of the lake, you're not allowed to go fishing or sail by boat or anything. So there's a very, very rich bird life in this part. So also for that reason, it's very nice to have binoculars.
Yeah, right now they are hiding. But yeah, there's also a lot of sheep here. It's really funny to see in such a. It's so zoomed in. It's unbelievable. Wow. Okay. So we go to the next one.
Let's go to Del.1. So in the late 19th century and also in the beginning of the 20th century, it was very common that the landowners also had, a piece of land into the bogs where they could then dig for peat, so they could use that for fuel. And during all this peat cutting, of course, sometimes they found interesting archaeological objects, and that's how the bog potties, for instance, were found.
Mm-hmm.
So,
and then when they did found, did they call someone? How did it work back then?
It depends on when you did the findings, but we can talk about that later when we get to the spot.
Yeah. Included also in that exhibition that you did the Circle Outdoor. Was there something that someone took home and they That was it for this program, but stay tuned for the next one. In the meantime, don't forget to check our Facebook page, BURT, for updates on our schedules and programs. See you soon.
that's a very good indication that he was actually a human sacrifice. Also because at this time of the Iron Age, about 400 BC, people were not buried, they were cremated. So he was, just by being placed in the bog, he was treated differently than all other people.
Yeah. And why were they doing human sacrifices at that time? What is the theory, at least?
Well, we don't know why. You know, it could have been because of illness or some kind of threats. We have, as I said, the intestines were well preserved in Toloman. So we have we've just made a new study where we have analyzed the colon contents of Toloman to find out what he had been eating as his last meal. Yeah, well, we found out that he had been eating some kind of porridge consisting of primarily barley, but also wheat seeds of pale Persicaria and flax. So that was the main ingredients. And then we also found out that he had been eating some kind of fish as well, fatty fish. So we can kind of reconstruct his last meal based on that, and actually make almost a recipe, because this was a really detailed study.